Sokoneza kwa makina a intaneti kukonza maphunziro othandizira kukweza bizinesi za nyumba zofalitsa mauthenga.
Mwalalapo nawa mu Windhoek. Zikomo Malawi. Siyalemukela Zimbabwe. Great. A warm welcome to the Namibian capital, Windhoek, to our virtual participants and our in-person participants. That's you joining us here today. Today we are kicking off the 2022 conference on the future of journalism education in Southern Africa. I'm joined here on stage by Ms. Salma Moses, who's our sign language interpreter for today. I am Bradley Chongarero. I am your host and program director for today. Let's see, we've got someone joining us online as well. Habari Lulu. Let's see, she should be popping up on the screen there. Well, Lulu Lolo is a graphic recorder. She's joining us today from Nairobi to use a different kind of storytelling to capture today's deliberations. Habari Lulu.
Habari zenu.
Okay, welcome.
Asante sana.
Asante. Okay, before we continue, I'd just like to welcome Ms. Zoe Titus from the Namibia Media Trust, as well as Peter Tesselage from DW Academy for an informal discussion on today's conference. I think I've noted down a couple of questions specifically. I think, everyone in the audience still probably has some questions around the formatting of today's discussion. I think I'll start off with Ms. Zoe Titus. And just a quick question for Ms. Titus is, the title of this conference is Crafting Journalism Education for Viable Media. Why does this training change the viability crisis? Why do we focus on this aspect?
I think, good morning, everyone. It's so great to see you and thank you so much for coming through, and hello to everyone online. We thought when we started planning, we threw around many ideas, but the one that we really settled on is the issue of media viability. It's the most important thing, I think, in the media space under discussion. Everyone is trying to find out how to make media viable, to make media sustainable, because we all acknowledge the importance of good journalism at this time. But, the media and journalism exist within a much wider ecosystem. So if you are dealing with digital disruption in terms of media viability, the actual business aspect of it, you must also adjust the training aspect, because there are now new challenges to media viability. So the training, the skills must be developed in tandem.
I think that's very important. And I think it ties in with what's been experienced over the last couple of years, digital disruptions, media viability. And I think that also ties in with the next thing that I'd just like to ask Peter as well, which is, why are we discussing the future of journalism education hosted between 4 different organizations that aren't actually universities? It's either media houses, it's civil society. So why is that the specific case?
I think because we actually believe that that is the future of journalism education. And particularly when we look at the changing media landscape, the viability challenges, then we must admit that universities play a crucial role. But when it comes to adapting and changing, then organizations like the Namibia Media Trust, like MISA Malawi with its training center and site, are actually much more able to adapt quickly to the needs and to the changes and provide that training and that capacity building that actually changes the newsrooms. And I think in that collaboration between innovating through training and training at the same time the fundamentals of journalism, the principles, the ethics, etc., that's where the trade and the journalism actually can grow and develop. And particularly if we see that the roles of journalism are also changing. I mean, most journalism today happens not only in a newspaper or radio station. At the same time, the journalist is in a more or less personal capacity on social media, and there he's also reporting. And I think that's where civil society, media organizations, and civil and training institutions and educational institutions can actually come together and not only shape the future of journalism education, but also actually shape the future of journalism itself by bringing things like TikTok, etc., into a journalism realm and using the platforms that people are actually using to provide reliable information, to moderate constructive journalism, dialogue, and to provide context and analysis for people to, in the end, make a good decision.
Okay. I think one key takeaway from me is that media houses, education and training institutions, as well as civil society organizations, are easily faster adaptable to the fast changing landscape of journalism. Is that correct, Peter?
I think so, yes.
Okay, great. So, I mean, everyone's just sitting there looking at me. You can see that this is not actually a conventional classroom setup that we have here in person. I think I just want to ask Peter the reason behind that. What can we expect from the crowd today?
Well, I think interaction is a key ingredient when it comes to learning, and also into this space is about learning. But when we do journalism trainings, we also usually don't have a classroom setup. We work practical, we do hands-on exercises, we experiment and we give feedback and we discuss. And feedback doesn't only come from the trainer, but feedback usually also comes from the participants themselves reflecting on what they did. And this is the kind of interaction and dynamics that we want both in this room as well as in the online space, where we want questions, where we want the panelists to get knowledge, to move forward actually.
Okay, great. So engagement. So will everyone in the room today be engaging? Okay, can we have that again? Will everyone be engaging? Okay, great. And we also hope for engagement from our virtual participants as well. I think just to end off this informal discussion, to both, maybe starting off with Zoe and then Peter, what are you looking forward to most today and also over the next 3 days?
Okay. Well, this is the fourth conference that we are hosting. Since 2019. And I always have an incredible amount of fun. It's exciting, it's loud, it's boisterous, and it's very informal and engaging. So I'm looking forward to that. But at the same time, I also acknowledge that there are so many people in the room with so much experience in journalism. And this is really, we hope that we are providing a comfortable and a safe space for people to engage freely and to learn from each other. I learn something new every day, at least one thing. So I hope that they are going to be many takeaways for people from these 3 days. The other exciting thing is this year is the first time that we are hosting this conference virtually. So that's a new element, and we're also learning. So hopefully, fingers crossed, everything goes well. But it's the first time that we are engaging with our partners in this way, Mr. Malawi and SITE. So I just wanted to say to everyone here, I hope that you will not leave today and think this is the end of the conference. Next online tomorrow and join the group from Zimbabwe, from Bulawayo, and our partners in Malawi, Lilongwe.
I think my highlights will be the connections, because we have a lot of topics on the agenda: social media, TikTok, viability, podcasts that connect professional journalism with how we actually learn and develop that further. And I think these connections is what I'm really looking forward to. And in the last 4 years, it always kind of wove through the sessions. And I'm really looking forward to that this time again. But I'm also really curious to see how the setup in Bulawayo is going to look like and what the Lilongwe setup will be looking like. And I mean, hybrid conferences, it's the first one for us as well. I think it's good. It's nice to have people to interact with here, but it's also nice to know this is not just happening in Namibia, but this is connected in the Southern African region. So that's what I'm looking for. But then beside that, I think every module of the plan that we have for the next 3 days is actually a highlight.
Okay, thank you. So as Ms. Titus said, it's going to be fun. We're all going to engage. We've got participants from other parts of Southern Africa as well tuning in. And with that, I think I'll just conclude our brief discussion. What Ms. Titus, or what Zoe actually mentioned was, this is not the first time that this conference is happening. It's actually the 4th iteration. The first one, if I'm not mistaken, took place in Malawi in 2019. And it was not disrupted during COVID. Actually, from 2020 and 2021, it was fully online. So this year, what we're doing is we're having a hybrid format. So hopefully, like we had a little bit of a challenge with Lulu at the beginning, we won't be having a lot of that. With that being said, as also mentioned, there are 4 different organizations that are hosting the conference today. That includes the Namibia Media Trust, NMT, Zimbabwe Center for Innovation and Technology, as well as the Malawi chapter for the Media Institute of Southern Africa, and also the German Media Development Agency, DW Academy. The main thing that this conference has been doing, and hopefully that it will do today as well, is that it will provide a platform to discuss and pose questions on the challenges and opportunities that's facing journalism education, specifically in this region. I think to take a cue, and this has also been mentioned before from one of the speakers that we'll be hearing from today, Professor Franz Kruger, you know, journalism is changing, and journalism education also needs to reflect that change. Okay, great. I just need to use the mic so we don't lose our virtual participants. I think just to make sure that we have a fruitful discussion today, just a few house rules. The first thing is, actually, you can take out your mobile phone right now, if you have it on you. Just make sure people aren't taking out their mobile phones. Please just take out your mobile phone. If you have not done so already, just make sure that it's on silent so that we don't have any disruptions while the speakers are speaking. To the participants on Zoom, can we maybe just briefly on one of the screens pull up our Zoom virtual participants? While that's being done, virtual participants, would you also, I see some have identified themselves by organization, but also if you're an individual, just make sure that you're using your real name on Zoom so that we can easily identify who's joining this conversation online. And also with that being said, if you're not speaking, also please try to keep yourself muted. The third thing is, let's all be respectful. This needs to be an environment.
Mute, please, mute.
Okay, thank you for muting. Let's engage. In order to engage, let's make this a safe environment for everyone that's going to be joining us. I think
just mute up.
trying to be as inclusive as possible. Our sign language interpreter, Salma, is going to be with us for the next 3 days. That's correct, the next 3 days. And also the official language for the conference is English.
Can you just be sweet and
when
just
you're making the comments on Zoom, on Facebook Live, just make sure that it's also in English so that we can also engage with what you're saying. I think with that being said, seeing as everyone already has their phones out as well, we're trying to use a tool called Padlet. So they're going to pull up the URL as well. So Padlet's a really useful tool to know who's joining here in the room as well as online. So if the link just comes up, I think the link is tiny.1/educonference. Would we be able to pull up the link for the in-person participants and the virtual participants? Okay, great. So the link is not actually there, but to go there, tiny, TINY .1/1 as in spell out /educonference. So it's actually a very useful tool to see who's joining us here, and also some of the interests that you have as well. I think one of the ones that I particularly liked from this morning is, if we can just scroll down a little bit, still down a little bit, we'll see here Stephanie Darkstein. She was saying, Ande, if we can go down a little bit more, she's saying your idea to make media more viable. So the idea that she shared there was seed funding for innovation. I think that's a good idea that she shared. I think if you also follow the link, you also see the ideas of some of the other people, and you can share your idea as well. She's indicated her favorite song, which I was actually listening to this morning, is Jill Scott Heron, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." So hopefully we'll be getting that during the tea break being played, or during lunch as well. Is the link. Is it possible that we can perhaps display it for 2 minutes as well? If we can. So the link is tiny, TINY .one/edu conference, CONFERENCE. Is it going through? Okay, great. So it's working. Okay, so the link is there as well. So I think we'll just allow for maybe 2 minutes while you just read through some of what's already been there. Also, you'll be able to fill this in out throughout the day. It's just to better understand and get ideas as well. I think with that being said, everyone's fine with the link now. We will move on. We're just not going to have this discussion here in this room. We want to engage people on social media, online as well. We want to get ideas from people that are on social media. So with that being said, I'll just ask our technical team to pull up our official hashtags for the conference, as well as the organizations that you can tag. So the official hashtags are hashtag journalism education, hashtag journalism excellence, hashtag media viability, hashtag future journalism. I think these will also be on the various pages of the organizations involved. So also make sure to tag at CITE, CITE.
Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to MICT Director for Media Affairs, Mr. Franz Ngitila, who will deliver the welcoming address on behalf of the Ministry of Information and Communications Technology.
Director of Proceedings, thank you very much for the opportunity. Colleagues, good morning. Before I get to my speech, let me say a few words. We're really excited to be part of these proceedings. And I'm tempted really to appreciate the presence of our veteran, Madam Gwen Lister. For those of you who might not know, we have that bond. To me, she's like everything. I can't call her my mother. She's too young for that. But she's everything to me. Colleagues, I see Joe Titus. These are colleagues we came a long way. And I want to say this, that you guys are very, very fortunate enough, having gotten this opportunity to be invited and to be part of this event. I recognize my brother here, Frederick Lins. These are colleagues who have been in the field for a very long time, because sometimes people misinterpret journalism with work and opportunities. It's not about always that. It's a calling. And us Namibians, we're very fortunate enough because we have got a brand here in the name of Gwen. I remember when we just got our independence in 1990, 21st March. Thereafter, then they went into organizing what is known as World Press Freedom Day. That took place, I think, in Safari in 1993, 91. It was not easy, guys. Here we have tea when we enter, we can eat nicely, we are connected. It was not like that. It was a war situation. I remember seeing Gwen running with the late John Liebenberg. My soul rest in peace. It's a journey, but see how she's still looking. More than 30 years of Namibia's independence, meaning she lived before, she lived, and she continued living. And here we are continuing to shape us onto the future. So that's how lucky we are. Having said that, allow me now to get back to my speech, but always remember, they say, the more things change, the more they continue confusing you and they remain the same. So we're lucky to have this platform. Good morning, media educators, members of the media fraternity, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to speak to you in my capacity as a director of print media affairs and also as acting executive director of the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology, where I come from. Indeed, this task was entrusted to me by MICT management, more so my executive director, Dr. Audrey Mate, who also wanted to be part, but due to some equal commitments, could not be here with us to officiate this historic event in our journey to enhance media industry in the ever dynamic and changing socioeconomic environment. We have seen how the colleagues were putting forth the thinking behind this gathering. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of journalism education has been a subject of debate and contention for more than a century now. In other words, journalism hasn't just started yesterday. It's a trade. It's a call. It's a calling that has a long history in our journey as human beings. And despite this history behind, the topic remains relevant even up to date and critical, and never before that we are all called upon to really interrogate ourselves and see how best this trade can remain relevant, considering all these challenges that we have, more so about viability and sustainability, and also in areas of good journalism and professionalism. It's a challenge that we have. At a time when the established economic model for journalism is collapsing, news organizations are retrenching, and journalist workforce is shrinking. It's no more as it used to be. Things have changed completely. The justifications for journalism schools continue graduating thousands of hopeful recruits is increasingly debated and calls for a new mindset and pragmatic approach if journalism is to remain relevant. In other words, this trade that we are in require a complete mind shift. It's no more as it used to be. It requires a mind shift. In other words, these upheavals create an opportunity or an opportune time to rethink the configurations of journalism programs and activities. For historical and institutional reasons, most journalism programs retain the structure, some more than others, of an industrial model of training so as to sustain the industry. The mass production of journalism fashions the practice taught today and embody an understanding of communication as a process of transmission from producer to receiver. For example, let's consider the traditional role of a journalist. The way we are taught is to find information, shape it into an accurate story, and transmit it as quickly as possible to mass audience via a mass medium. This model of journalism, which is taught in journalism schools and run as a business by news organizations, has remained unchanged for many decades. Also adding multimedia using new storytelling techniques and delivering the product over the internet does not also change the basic model either. So I put it to you that moving the focus from the industry to the community could connect journalism with its democratic roots and take advantage of a new form of a new creation, production, editing, and distribution. In other words, we are saying we have to move from industrial model of journalism onto a model that is more viable and sustainable to fit the current trends and practice. Because if we continue the way we used to do our business, chances are we might lose out in the process. Therefore, the trend requires that we advocate a community-oriented model of journalism that would place the journalist as a reporter, as an editor, and as a facilitator within a community. These configurations would emphasize the needs of community first, and it would re-emphasize journalism's natural connections with community and refocus attention on the role that journalism can play in the health of community and making information a public good. The question here is, do you understand your calling? Because it's not about writing stories. Writing stories for who and for what? These are guides that should always guide you. And it's a known even during the 2020 World Press Freedom Day celebrations, the theme was making information as a public goods. And that is the new trend that people are moving towards. Therefore, based on the above assessment, colleagues, the Ministry of Information and Communication Technology welcomes the initiative by the organizers of this conference, which are, I am told, of course, is the Namibia Media Trust, the Center for Innovation and Technology based in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, the DW Academy, which is a well-known international institution. Here in Namibia, we're fortunate, we have our colleague Peter among us. He's always in the far front. And of course, the Malawi chapter of the Media Institute of Southern Africa. Thank you for providing this platform for us to consider our approach to journalism education in Namibia and the broader region. In other words, Namibia continues to be the champion and the trendsetter in the media landscape. The conference that I have alluded to earlier, for which my veteran was one of the pioneers, led to the world declaring the World Press Freedom Day, and also the UN General Assembly adopting, within the Article 19 of the UN Declarations of Human Rights. These are all milestones that we continue to make as a country. But when you talk about country, you're referring to not by individuals, but a group collective. But of course, group collectives, they are always led by committed individuals. And this is where we really want to thank the colleagues who see it fit to organize and get you together and move you in a different direction. Probably from now on, this will be a very historic event, and some of you will be the champions to carry on with this message. So, suffice to state that in 2020, of course, here, Namibia successfully hosted the 30th commemoration of the World Press Freedom Day, which by then coincided with the 30th anniversary of the Windhoek Declarations. And at the conclusion of that event, Namibia, together with the rest of the international community, have adopted what we call 30+ declarations, Windhoek 30+ declaration that called for the promotion of more inclusive, pluralistic, and sustainable media sector, among others. And this is very, very important because people will be benchmarking what will happen from now on. They're looking at the challenges that we are facing, particularly in the media industry. You have the shift into digitalizations, you have traditional media, and the question is, how sustainable will that be? And if we don't change our mindset and move with the trend, chances are we might lose out in the process. So therefore, that declaration was further adopted by the 41st session of the UN General Assembly in Paris, France, of course, and the adoption of the Windhoek Plus 30 declaration was a further testimony that Namibia continues to play a leading role in advocating for free, and independent media at global level. Not only at global level, but of course, here we are talking about Southern Africa. Therefore, as a Ministry of Information and ministry responsible for information management and dissemination within government, we continue to take effective steps to foster diversity and viable public, private, and community media, and implement specific policies along with relevant safeguards in order to promote the production of independent, quality journalism and to ensure people's access to relevant, diverse, and reliable information. When we talk about independence of the media, there's always a thin line because there are some of us who confuse that word. When you are employed or when in a far front as a journalist, don't confuse your calling with your personal interest, because in the process, it will defeat the purpose. Learn from those who have been in the field. And I have seen, particularly our young, upcoming, promising journalists, sometimes they go offline. But mind you, this is not a once-off thing. It's your lifelong calling. Guard it, preserve it, give credential and relevance to that profession so that we will appreciate your staying into that profession. Mind you, we're talking about making information as a public good. What does that mean? Community out there, they are starving. They are in poverty simply because they don't know what's next. It's your calling. And that's why you are called, the media is called the fourth estate. In the democratic setup, where there is an advancement that we must stay within the confine of the separation of power, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. There should be independence between these three branches. Then, of course, we call the media the fourth estate because you have a role to play, advocacy role. You are not only there to educate and entertain, you are the most critical colleague necessary for the development and upliftment of our society, because informed people, informed nations, they are always forward-looking and they depend on you. That's why they say information is a public good. Therefore, from our end, colleagues, or in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to emphasize that government and media remain indispensable partners in providing access to information to our citizens. Without freedom of the press, democracy would not really flourish. Therefore, it's our responsibility as stakeholders to continue protecting the independence of the media and promote the freedom of the press. Allow and create that space for the media to do their work. A free press is crucial for functioning and thriving democracy such as Namibia. From our end as government, for example, the passage of the Access to Information Bill, to us, we view it as a right step in the right direction. Once signed into law, it will be required that all of us play our part in ensuring that we use it to the benefit of our readership and constituents, for them to benefit from this legislation. And for that to happen, we need to prepare ourselves in creating an enabling environment where those in the media space act professionally, guided by journalistic ethics and standards. And this requires the dedication of trained professional journalists who strive to produce news and information as a public good, not for personal gains. Hence the relevance of this initiative, which ought to be supported by all of us in the media industry. Saying that, colleagues, thank you once more, particularly to the organizers, and we look forward to receiving information about the outcome of these deliberations. I believe that there is much room for collaborations as partners. I wish you all well on your deliberations over the next 3 days, and I really want to thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kitila. I think some very important takeaways from the statement there. And I think we can also start making some links as well. Mr. Kitila mentioned that, you know, in the independence of media, there's a fine line and the importance of learning from those who have been in the field. At the beginning of his statement, he pointed out some, you know, veteran journalists who's also here, Ms. Gwen Lister, as well as some veterans within the media industry, Ms. Zoe Titus and Mr. Links. This is all about engaging and education. You know, seeing the change. When he started off, he was talking about world press freedom in 1993 and what the climate was at that time. If you reflect and look on it today, it looks something completely different. One of the other things that were mentioned was challenges of viability and sustainability. And that ties in with what we heard from from Peter from DW Academy about a new mindset and a pragmatic approach. And I think the partners involved within this 3-day conference, it's exactly what is going to happen. I think before we continue, just to make sure that we are still together, maybe we can just ask one person from the audience, either here or online, what their takeaway was. Do we have any takers? It doesn't have to be anything profound. Just a takeaway. It was a very educational statement.
All right, good morning, everybody. I think what I took away from it is that there's just been quite an evolution when it comes to media. It's constantly changing, and workshops like this allow us to learn more about this constant change and how to basically just be better informers per se.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So I think just because we're going to be engaging in the future, when you're speaking, even from online, just maybe indicate your name as well. But that's fine. I think we'll just continue with the program now. The theme of this conference is digital disruptions, crafting journalism education for viable media. Looking at the origins of the word journalism, it would appear that from the earliest of times, the purpose of informing the people lay at the core of journalism, and this was mentioned as well. Despite the fact that vehicles of gathering and conveying information to people have evolved over the years, news have remained constant in journalism. Just to take a quote here, news in journalism is just like air for human beings. Otherwise, journalism cannot survive. News is, in fact, the soul of journalism. It is the most succinct term we have for the activity of gathering and disseminating news. The issue of sustainability is the major theme underlying our discussions today. And that's something that's been recurring straight from the beginning of the program.
Kusokoneza kwa makina a intaneti, kukonza maphunziro othandizira kukweza bizinesi za nyumba zofalitsa mauthenga.